Welcome back to episode 85 of the What's the Dill podcast. I'm your host, Pete Dill, and we have a great show lined up for you today. We're going to be talking about the winter freeze that happened this week, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and my reflections on it, a crazy game my son is playing that's freaking out the neighbors, and more. Thank you so much for being here with me today. As always, I want to thank all of you guys for being here with me today, whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on your podcast platforms. I appreciate you so much. It's been incredible to just take this journey with you, do this podcast, and every listener, every viewer, every person who's downloaded the episodes have been so incredible, and it's just been it's been so fun to do. It's been so fun to do this and get feedback and make an impact on your all's lives and just be there hanging out with you, chatting with you in your downtime, in your chores time, in your commute. I appreciate that so much. So just want to say thank you again. Shout out to all of you guys. First up, we got to talk about the winter freeze that happened this week. Maybe some of you were still in it. Maybe it's negative 10 where you are. Maybe it's negative 20 where you are. I know Texas, here it got pretty cold. We had pretty mild winters here, and it still got pretty cold. It got down to the teens. So, needless to say, Texans were freaking out. Going to the store, going to H-E-B, there's no toilet paper. That's gone. Why is that everyone's first item to take when like a big weather event happens? Toilet paper. Man, listen, we're gonna be spending some time at home. I'm gonna do some home cooking food. I'm gonna need some toilet paper. All right, I'm gonna need some toilet paper. I think that homemade chili that I make, that usually does a number on me. So I gotta take some toilet paper. I mean, it's cold out here. And I think a lot of Texans here in Texas, we have some PTSD from a few years ago, like 3 years ago in 2021, when we had a really bad storm, lots of ice, lots of snow. We were not prepared. There was no plow trucks. There was no salt anywhere. People were slipping everywhere. The heat went off. The water went off. So Texans are having some PTSD. And PTSD from the grid failing. Texans, we have this PTSD from the grid failing. Now, what's the grid, you say? Texas is different than every other state. Every other state all shares a grid. All of their states share different regional grids. So if the power goes out in Oregon, supply comes from, Washington and California. If the power goes out and goes down in New Hampshire, Vermont helps out with the supply, with the rising demand. They can help us with supply. You kind of share power. So when one goes out, you kind of help each other out. Texas, we're different down here. Texans, very Texas thing is to have their own grid. So Texas has its own grid that just powers Texas. And that's all that's on the news. That's all people are talking about is the grid. The grid. Turn on the news, the grid. The grid. The grid. The grid. Is there enough supply for the grid? The grid. The demand's going up. The grid. Here's a little emergency news about the grid. The grid. You go to work, the grid. I hope the grid doesn't fail. You go into the store, you hear people talk about the grid. Well, we hope the grid is okay. Is the grid gonna survive this time? The grid. People are worried about the grid because in 2021, the grid didn't work. And so that just put the grid now in our language. Anytime the weather goes below 50 degrees, people are just like, the grid, gotta get toilet paper, the grid. Let's go to the store, we gotta get some toilet paper, the grid. So the grid was on everyone's minds, on the tip of everyone's tongues, the grid. Which is just so funny. Like, I had no idea that Texas had its own grid system, like power grid. So as I've been down here the past few years, I found myself even being like, yeah, the grid. I hope the grid's, going to be okay during, this 60-degree day in the spring. Hopefully the grid can, survive. I was looking up the grid. The other day when it was really, really cold. Because it was like, okay, here's how many outages there are. This line shows the supply. This line shows the demand. They don't want to get too close. I was like, whoa, that's pretty close. Grid. I don't know really what it means when they touch, but grid, you're looking too close for comfort, grid. So the grid is on everybody's mind here in Texas. Now, thank you God, the grid survived. We're basically out of the freezing cold temperatures. We're already going to be up to like the 60s and 50s, and I think actually low 70s in a couple days. So the grid survived. The grid did its job. Everyone is cheering the grid. Thank you, God. So, hope you're all staying warm out there. Hope it wasn't too crazy for you. I saw some wicked temperatures out there. 50, -40, -10, wind chill, snow. It's just like nasty, nasty. So hope y'all stayed safe. Hope y'all stayed warm. Hope y'all had enough toilet paper and you were able to survive this winter Arctic blast of 2024 here in January. I now want to talk about something that also happened this past week, which was MLK Day, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And, you know, I'm not exactly sure why this isn't a full, like, holiday, or it's like, you know, some schools has off, some work has off, but some don't. Like, I had to work, but I know schools have. I'm not exactly sure of what, is like, if this is not a bank holiday or the difference between a federal holiday and a state holiday. If you know why MLK Day is one of those, like, holidays that sometimes there's work, sometimes there's not, sometimes there's school, sometimes there's not, let me know, because I'm not exactly sure. I would actually love to hear what you think, what the answer is to that. So this past MLK Day, I had some good prayer time. And I was thinking about, you know, what Martin Luther King Jr. means for our country. And I thought of a really, really good, I think God spoke to me in a really powerful way during my prayer. And I felt very moved, and I want to share this with you guys. You know, setting this up, talking about Martin Luther King Day, and talking about race relations in America can be challenging for white people. It can be uncomfortable. I think a lot of times as white people, we don't really want to dive too deep into like the black experience in America or hear too much about the plight of black Americans in America because it's very uncomfortable. It can be very uncomfortable. It can be hard to know what to say, what not to say. Is that too far? What does that mean? Is this a good question? Should I not ask this question? Should I know the answer to this question? It can be a challenge to know how to navigate talking about race relations in America. So I was thinking about MLK and kind of what he stood for, and as he was pushing civil rights in a peaceful way, pushing civil rights, gaining the rights for black Americans in our country, and what that means for us now. And I was thinking about this in prayer, and I was reminded, I think God spoke to me in a powerful way. And he basically was saying this, like, our identity is a son and daughter of God first and foremost. I think in America it's very easy to think of ourselves as Americans first. We're like rock, flag, and eagle, football, Super Bowl. We got the things we love here, and this is our main identity. But what I was reflecting on was that our true identities are as sons and daughters of God. And everyone is endowed with that identity, which means that everyone deserves the dignity that God gave them at birth. Every race deserves dignity. Black Americans, Latinos, Asian Americans, white people, everyone deserves the dignity. Everyone deserves the respect and dignity that God gave to them. It's not our gift to black Americans to say, hey, you deserve to be treated with dignity. That's not our gift to give as white people. That's what God gives them. That's God's sons and daughters. And we can, I think, shy away from the challenging topics sometimes as white Americans. We can shy away from really diving deep because we don't want to be pulled out of our comfort zone. It's not easy maybe to talk about race relations in America because it makes us feel uncomfortable. Because it makes us feel like we're not in control. We don't have the answers. Maybe there's a lot I have to learn. Maybe I do hold on to some beliefs that I need to change a little bit. It's not easy for white Americans to talk about these things. But I was reflecting on that we all have dignity that God gave each one of us, and we need to live up to that dignity. We need to treat others with that dignity. We need to treat others with that dignity and respect. We need to listen to black Americans and hear about the hardships that they endure and have an openness to say, hey, you know what? Maybe we do need to make some changes. Maybe I need to make some changes because our identities are in Jesus Christ. And that identity is always going to challenge us. Being a son and daughter of God is always going to challenge us. It's always going to pull us out of our comfort zone. Following Jesus is going to challenge us. Following Jesus is going to challenge our beliefs that we hold on to. Following Jesus is going to challenge insecurities that we have. Following Jesus is going to challenge our hearts, challenge the hardness of hearts we have. Following Jesus is going to challenge what we deeply hold on to that maybe is ugly and nasty we don't want to give up. Following Jesus is going to pull us out of the depths of our comfort, pull us out of our seats, and make us better. And part of that is going to be how we deal with each other. Part of that is going to be how we deal with people of other races. Part of that is how we deal with Black Americans. If it's pulling you out of your comfort zone, that's good. Because following Christ means being pulled out of your comfort zone. If talking about the Black experience and talking about what Black people go through makes you uncomfortable, that's good. Because following Jesus is uncomfortable sometimes. Our goal is not to become the greatest American ever. Our goal is to become like Christ. And we know for sure that he cares about his sons and daughters, and he loves his sons and daughters. So we owe it to his sons and daughters to treat them with the respect and love that they deserve. And it's not something that we should shy away from. We should be challenged by it, and it's okay to be challenged by it. And so I was reflecting on this, like, hey, like MLK stood for something that can maybe, and these principles, that can maybe be challenging or uncomfortable, but like Christ is saying, I want that. I want you to be uncomfortable with this. I want you to challenge your heart. I want you to grow in ways of how we love others and respect others and learn from others by listening. And it made me think, though, also, if us Catholics aren't going to do it, if us Christians and us Catholics aren't going to stand at the forefront for race relations and bettering people's lives and being there to support and hear out our Black brothers and sisters, who's going to do it? We know corporations aren't going to do it. They're going to put all their silly little PR corporate comms next month in February about Black History Month and how they stand for this and that and justice and blah, blah, blah. But we really all know corporations are there to make money and profit for shareholders. That's what we know. We know our politicians have proven time and time again that the game of politics takes precedent. Not actually trying to make meaningful change in people's lives, but the game of politics takes precedent. So if it's not going to be us Christians, who is going to do it? Who the heck is going to have these conversations? Because we know the core and the foundation of tough conversations about race all go back to our identity in Christ, in God, that we're sons and daughters of God. We could talk about policy and that's good and these things, but we also deep down know that if we're going to be judged one day and God says, how did you treat my sons and daughters? And we say, oh man, I voted for the right guy. Oh, I voted for a guy who made increment. And what if God says, well, how did you treat my sons and daughters here? How did you treat my black sons and daughters right here? What is your answer going to be? What is your answer going to be? Well, I voted for a guy who really cared about X, Y, Z. We do know that God is calling us to radically love every single person that we encounter and to let his love shine through us. So if us Christians are not going to be at the forefront of fighting for our Black brothers and sisters, who's going to do it? It is up to us. It truly is up to us. I felt very convicted in prayer earlier this week because I was like, dang, if the Christians can't be the ones to be like, hey man, we have to treat each other very well. And we have to look out for our brothers and sisters. We have to make sure that we're listening and we're supporting each other, not just fighting and being divisive and letting, accusations fly. Because because God is a comforter. Jesus is a comforter. The evil one is an accuser. I said that last week. God is about unity. The evil one is about division. God is about love and a solid foundation. the evil one is about destroying people from the inside and tearing apart relationships. So I felt compelled and challenged this past Monday, MLK Day. I wanted to share that with y'all. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I'd love to hear what you think, because I want to have open dialogue and conversation throughout this podcast, but also about challenging topics. Let's not hold these things in. We know holding on to challenging topics, stuff that's going to tear us away from our comfort zone, is no bueno. So let's talk about it. Reach out to me. Tell me what you think. Did this convict you? Do you have other thoughts? Let me know. Okay. Moving on. Something very, very funny happened to me with my son, one of his new habits, and some neighbors. Okay. My son is like 18 months old. He's doing this thing where he's kind of in, I guess they call it the in and out phase. Things go out, things go in. He opens doors, he shuts them. He's obsessed with this. He's obsessed with opening and shutting doors. He's obsessed with it. He opens and shuts the door. He opens and shuts a door 600 times a day, not an exaggeration. I mean, you give this kid a good door, he's opening it and he's shutting it. And it's not just at home. We go out. We'll go to stores. He's walking right up to it. Okay, open that up. Okay, shut that. I'm like, dude, we got to go in. Like, there's other people trying to come in here. You know, I'm opening the door. Oh, he loves opening doors. And they're just like, dude, don't talk to me. I'm almost tripping over your kid. Let me please go into the store and get my toilet paper, because the toilet paper. So, my son loves this. He's also in this new evolution of opening and shutting doors with knocking on doors. The kid loves to knock on doors. He knocks on open doors, shut doors. He knocks on all the doors. So we got him a little basketball hoop that we kind of, pinned up to our front door. And long story short, we live in an apartment and people walk by our door a lot all day long. It's kind of like a motel. People are walking to the exit, walking to their apartment, walking down the stairs, up the stairs. People are walking by our door pretty often, our front door to our apartment. And we put his little basketball hoop on the back of our front door. And he loves basketball, which is just incredible. He is dunking on this thing constantly. We got it for him for Christmas, and he's taking the ball, he's dunking on it, we're clapping for him. I'm like, this kid loves a good applause, but he loves basketball. Okay, so how does this all come together? My son is freaking out our neighbors because he is dunking the basketball on the door, but then he's also knocking on our front door. But he's little, so he's got these little gentle hands, and it's just like this. And people are walking by, wherever they don't hear it. But the other day, he's playing basketball, and then he just stops to knock, gives a little knock. And I heard someone walk by and they go, "Did you hear that? What was that?" And I'm like, oh shoot. Our neighbors just hear like a gentle knock. And maybe he still makes so many noises, probably like, he's like, knocking. Our neighbor's like, "Did you hear that? What was that?" Dude, I'm like, I wanted to open the door. I'm like, hey, it's just he's 18 months. He loves knocking. But I was like, that would probably freak them out even more. I'm like, I think our neighbors think that they're like, they were just a little bit like, they had that tone in their voice of like, what was that knock? Is there a small human trying to get out of that front door? Now, this is running through my head. I was like, oh no. Our neighbors probably think someone's kidnapped behind here, because it's just a gentle knock that they're trying to be quiet. Like the kidnapper fell asleep and they're trying to knock on the door to get someone to notice. And I was like, oh shoot, what do I do here? So now, so I'm like, all right, just whatever. Just play it cool. You don't have to overdo anything. But now as we're walking the car, I'm kind of walking on the apartment being like, all right, everyone here wants to be here with his family. Every person you see wants to be with this family, wants to be going in and out of the apartment, wants to be going to the car. Everyone's happy. Smile. Everyone smile for the neighbor. If you see a neighbor, smile. Because we got to show that this is one big happy family and not get people freaking out when they hear gentle knocks. It's just a little kid having fun. So I thought that was so funny because, my stomach kind of turned in knots when I hear the neighbors go, "What was that? Did you hear that?" I'm like, oh no. This is not what we need right now. This is not what we need. So that was very funny to me. And there's really nothing I can do. I mean, I can't tell the kid to stop knocking. The kid loves knocking. It's his favorite thing. He loves knocking. He wants to open, shut doors all day and knock. So more power to him. We'll just, have to roll with the kind of gentle knocking going around in our apartment. Okay. Last thing. I don't know if you saw in the news, but there was this story about some Jewish people in New York digging tunnels to get into a synagogue. And there were some videos, because, that's illegal to be doing illegal construction. There were some videos of them getting arrested and having some fights, to, be in the synagogue. And two things. First thing, my perspective was this. I think it's easy to make light of that situation and laugh at it, because there's some very some pretty funny visuals of guys in tunnels coming out of grates, and it was just very kind of bizarre. I think it's easy to make fun of that. I think it's easy to tease that and tease those people and kind of look at them as haha, look at these people digging tunnels. But I kind of was I don't want to go there. I don't want to tease them, because I've always thought, something about this connection between Jesus and being Jewish. You know what I mean? It's kind of like people that are trying to live out the faith that Jesus lived out for most of his life, the things that the Holy Family did. They're doing the same rituals, basically. A lot of the same rituals. So I was I don't want to tease this. I don't want to tease it or make fun of it. So why I brought it up was because, wanted to see what y'all think about that. But it also reminded me, tunnels, I literally read this article and I saw videos of it, and I was struck with PTSD. I was oh, tunnels, here we go. Out of nowhere, I just was whoa, tunnels. Because it reminded me of a story about 10 years ago of me and tunnels. Me and some tunnels in Vietnam. When I was in the Philippines being a missionary, I took a trip with my buddy Pete, other buddy Pete. We took a trip to Vietnam to a time away from our mission to just kind of explore the city. And stay with a friend of the ministries, and we had a great time visiting Vietnam. Now, where tunnels come in is that we went on this tour of the U.S. and Vietnam battle site. It was this tourist ground showing the jungle warfare of the Vietnam War. Over there in Vietnam, they call it the American War. They don't call it the Vietnam War. They call it the American War. We call it the Vietnam War, which I was that makes sense. Okay, so we're at this tourist site. And we have a tour guide, and there's a lot going on. I'll spare you the details of what the tour was and all the different stations and the, battlegrounds. And this is where they made weapons. And, it's also from the Vietnamese perspective. So it was very interesting as an American. It was all just hey, this is where the Vietnamese took down some Americans. I was oh, dang, all right. But it was very respectful. They understand that basically it's 90% American. So it's not making fun of Americans, but it's from their perspective. This is where the Vietnamese made their weapons and this and that. So a big part of the Vietnam War was this tunnel warfare, that the Vietnamese dug tunnels, and they went here, went there, popped up here, kind of just dug all these tunnels, and the Americans had a tough time knowing this cities, that there were cities underground of all these tunnels that they dug out. So the final little leg of this tour was hey, we're going to go into one of these tunnels. We're going to crawl in. It's just a short little tunnel. It's 185 degrees in the jungle in Vietnam. It's the end of the tour. It's 5 in the afternoon. I didn't really know what was going on. I just kind of followed along. I was okay, we're going in a tunnel. We stepped inside. We're already kind of underground. It was a palapa, and then there was 5 feet dug out, so it's kind of like a basement floor. And then the palapa, I was oh, okay, we're here. And just bing, bang, boom, all of a sudden our tour guide was all right, we're going in the tunnel. And I kind of see a big opening. And I was oh, okay, sure, I'll probably walk into this. He crawls down first. The tour guide, my buddy, goes down. I'm last. And I kind of crawl in, not really knowing. And all of a sudden, I crawl into this tunnel. The opening was to trick me because the tunnel was tiny. I am a relatively big guy. I'm on my hands and knees. It's completely dark. It is scratching my back. Like, my back is scratching the top of the tunnel. I'm now at this point, because I said I was already underground, on this like palapa thing. Then we went down a ladder to go into the tunnel. We're like 12 feet underground. My back is scratching the top of this tunnel. I'm a big guy. The tour guide is 5'1". So I'm like, dude, I'm 66% bigger than you. You say you've done this. I'm now losing confidence that I'm going to be able to fit into this tunnel. Me, I've never felt claustrophobic before. I freaked out. I was like, oh, no. My fight or flight kicked in. And I was like, no, absolutely not. I start breathing heavy. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get stuck. Again, I'm trusting a man who's 5'1" to say, yeah, this is big enough for you. Kind of gives me the old up, down, looks up, eyeballs me, and he's like, yeah, you'll fit. Dude, I'm not trusting the old eyeball from you, bro. I'm like freaking out. People start coming behind me. So now I got people in front of me, my tour guide and my buddy. People start coming behind me. I'm in this tunnel. I am like, oh. I start praying. I'm like, oh, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. I'll do anything. Saint Michael, the archangel, defend us in battle, be our protection. My tour guide's like, hey, what you say back there, Pete? You okay back there? I'm like, keep going, bro, dude. Keep going. I'm praying my way through this tunnel. There's no enjoyment on this process. I am gaining nothing historically from this process. This is a prayerful and spiritual experience. There is nothing I'm learning about the history right now. I'm not taking it in right now. My back is getting scratched from 12 feet underground of dirt in Vietnam. And I was like, oh, no. This is not how I go. This is not where God has me to go. So all of a sudden, because my other buddy, he's a pretty big dude. So I just see his butts right in front of me. I can't even see anything. All of a sudden, I see a little bit of light. Kind of like from the side, so imagine just complete darkness, and all of a sudden I see a little light from the side. And I yell ahead, I'm like, hey, what's that light? He's like, that's a shortcut, that's not for now. I was like, where does it lead? He's like, oh, that leads up to the top again. That's not for now. The end of the tunnel is way ahead. I was like, brother, I am out of here. I'm taking the shortcut. I'm out of here. I get it. It's dark. It's crowded. This was a part of something. I get the picture. I crawl my way to the tunnel. I take the shortcut. I hop out of there. I am just gasping for air. I mean, there's people around on this tour. I come out of like, I am dripping in sweat. I am like dirt. I got dirt on my face. I was like, people were probably like, what, was this dude in the tunnel since the war ended? Like, who is this guy? I came flying out of there. And I was like, that was 700 yards of a tunnel. We've been in there for an hour and a half. And some guy from Michigan, he's like, oh, yeah, I think it was about 25 feet, I see. Yeah, because that's where you started. He kind of points me to where I started. It's like, I can see the people that are going behind me. It's 25 feet away. I was like, nah, that must have been like 600-700 yards, not 25 feet. And he's like, yeah, I think it was about 25 feet it looks like, but yeah. And I was like, dude, you don't even know. I was so, I got claustrophobic in there. And the guy was American, so he kind of got it. He kind of was like, all right, yeah, no, you're a pretty big dude. And, so all of a sudden, 10 minutes later, my buddy who made it through the whole tunnel and the tour guide come back up. And this tour guide, who is 5'1", had the audacity to come up to me, he knew I was scared. He sees me drenched in sweat. I got dirt all over me, and he's just like, "Oh, big American guy got scared," and I was just like, "Dude, not the time." But I kind of had to own. I had to laugh because I was like, "Dude, this guy is just like, what are you gonna do about it? I'm gonna hop back in that tunnel. I'm gonna get right out of here. What are you gonna do?" So I was like, "Yeah, I guess I have to take that right now." And I just owned it. I was like, "Yeah," I started maybe throwing a little bit of pseudoscience in there. I was like, "Yeah, I think when you're claustrophobic, your body's underground, it swells." So I didn't want to get stuck. I wasn't sure of the parameters or the clearance for a swelled body. And he was like, "Oh, you were just scared." And so I don't know what would have happened if I kept going down the tunnel, but I knew I needed to get out of there. So I took the shortcut. So when I saw this news of the tunnels with, our Jewish brothers and sisters in New York, I was just like, dude, that reminded me of being in the Vietnamese tunnel. And I was like, tunnels are no joke. So I just had such a laugh to myself thinking about that story in Vietnam, and I was just like, I wonder if that tour guide remembers. If he was just like, "Oh, that tall guy who was too scared to do the tunnel as he's taking." I'm probably part of that tour now. That tour guide's probably like, "If you can make it, you're tougher than a really tall American guy who was too scared to make it." Little kids make it through, and they're like, "Wow, I'm tougher than him." So it was just like a super funny memory to me, and I kind of died laughing thinking about it to myself. So share that with all of y'all. So that's it for me today. I appreciate you all so much. I appreciate you all checking in, watching, listening. Hope you have a great week. Hope you have a blessed week. Appreciate y'all. See y'all soon. Peace.